In this video, I'll show you from start to finish how I take my snowflake pictures, capturing a fleeting moment of nature's amazing creations. Well, welcome to another video. In this video, I'm going to show you how I take my snowflake images. It's probably the most requested how-to for my work I do. So to start, you need it snowing. Not all conditions are the same, so today isn't ideal for taking the flakes, but basically around -4 up, you can get it, but again, not all conditions are the same, so you want the shimmery snowflake. At least that's what I'm looking for. So in terms of gear, I'm on a full frame. I have a Venus Optics 2.5 to 5 times macro lens, this guy here. So larger flakes, you'll want about 2 times magnification. So you don't necessarily need up to 5 times. And I got extension tubes in here as well. So extension tubes at that long end will give me about just shy of 9 times magnification. So for the really, really small flakes, that's good. But again, you can get away with less. With the larger flakes, you can get away with probably a crop sensor and a 1 times magnification macro lens. And then I got a ring flash. So you use a ring flash, use a single bay. I don't know if that's going to show up. You just use one flash, it shoots across the flake, and then that angle is probably the hardest part. But so this particular lens doesn't have filter rings, so I did a hack job, but I bought a second lens cap cover, cut out the hole, have that on, so it's a little loose, but I just hold it. Other lenses, you can get these, the ring flash will go right on and it'll stay at a fixed length, which is helpful because the angle is key. With this moving around adds another variable, which is not ideal, but this is an extension tube. They're pretty cheap, $100 for a set, so you get 3 of them, and that essentially adds magnification. It'll shorten, it'll reduce your focal distance, essentially adding to your magnification. It does come in the cost of depth of field, but it will get you there for super cheap. Again, you can convert a normal lens into a macro lens using these guys. So the next step is actually getting a flake to photograph. So I knit it. This is a glove, but you can use anything knitted. I use black because I like that contrast. I like to have my background black. But if you use any other color, that's just going to be your background color. But I prefer the contrast of the black. And then you hold it out and you catch your flake. Again, these aren't going to be ideal conditions. You can use a brush to kind of separate them depending on how quick it's going. But this is all going to be done handheld because these guys, the flakes melt pretty quick. And you can see here, this is about a minute from start to finish of the same tip. And you can see how much it's changed. But I put them in the freezer, and then it's acclimated to the temperature. So when they come out, it's not warm and or melting just due to the temperature of the glove. So let's say we caught a flake. We have this guy here, and we want to photograph this one. Because you're at a high magnification, sometimes trying to find your flake is hard. So what I do is I put, this is a metal chopstick, but you can put anything, even the end of the brush. You put it next to it and then use that as a guide. And then use that as a guide coming in. So in terms of settings, what I use is, it's going to change depending on how big your flake is. So the bigger the flake, you aren't going to use as high of a magnification, which is going to give you more freedom in terms of lower ISO or higher aperture, or a smaller aperture given the larger depth of field. So for the bigger flakes, the stellar dendrites, I typically use around f5.6 on this guy, and then the 2.8 as I kind of move in. So I'll do 1/200th of a second, 1/60th of a second. ISO will kind of range between 200, 400 depending. And then again, I keep those settings typically the same and just change the aperture. I might bump up the ISO to about 400. And then my light bay, I use that 1/28th. And again, that's a single bay. I use these guys. Most ring lights will have these macro lights to help find as well. So your flake. So everything I do is going to be handheld. Again, you won't have time to get a tripod set up. So the steadier you are, the easier it is to focus stack, because this is going to require focus stacking due to the depth of field. So this is what a single frame would look like. And then obviously you focus stack numerous images and you get this as your result. Again, handheld, so the flashes come out of this. The alignment is the hardest part to get your flake. You want your flake at an angle, and then your flash at a little bit of a different angle to create that shimmer effect. If you are flat on, you're going to shoot right through it. And if you're too far, you don't get the same look.
So this is an example of the same flake that was shot at two different angles, and you can clearly see the difference that I'm talking about. One, you have the flash reflecting off the surface of the flake, and the other one's kind of more shooting it right through, and you just get the outline.
It changes depending on how far away you are, so there's no like definitive thing, but normally what I do is I go over it and then a little bit to the left with my right bay shooting. So it's something like this. And then you just pan up and down through. And you check to see that you got the angle right. I spend a lot of time doing this, and then the angle's wrong, so you gotta either redo it or find another flake, because again, this might have melted on you. But again, I find this is the hardest part of this whole process.
Using the live view is better for getting the right angle. It does have two drawbacks in that it's harder to find the flakes versus the viewfinder, and I find it less steady. The instant feedback on the right angle allows for less wasted frames though. So this is overall the process I use. hopefully this time it's recording. I literally processed the whole Snowflake and couldn't find the file. I don't think it was recording. So we're now back inside the house. Our hands are warm. We've gone through most of the photos of the ones that are completely out of focus. Our group, there's only 17 here, so this is a pretty small stack for a flake this detail. So I have no idea if I'm going to have everything captured, but we'll quickly find out. So I don't do a whole lot in Lightroom before I put it into Photoshop and stack it. I will probably just bump up the texture. I'll apply that to all the image. Oops. And I'll also do the lens calibration. They don't have my 2.5 time and 5 times macroing, so I just put it on the 2. Select all, sync settings, so I'll put it on all of them. Synchronize, let's do its thing. So once that's done, select all, edit in, open as layers. So this will put each one of these as an individual layer into Photoshop. And since my computer is almost 10 years old, I'll quickly jump to it already being loaded. All right, so they're now all loaded. So the first step we do is select all of them into the edit menu, auto align layers. Just auto. For the most part, Photoshop will do a pretty good job. Sometimes it doesn't. I'll show you how to align those ones that don't afterwards, but again, we'll speed up time here. So Photoshop has done its job aligning them, and you can kind of scroll through and it looks like it aligned them all. If it didn't, and you'll find this when you go through, but we'll take the top layer here and you just reduce the opacity of it. So once the opacity is down, you can see kind of the both layers, and then you just marry them up. And again, you're only going to do this for the area that's in focus that you need. It's not going to be a perfect match. Hopefully you just need to move it. You might need to rotate it a little bit as well, but for the most part, I've been able to just move them and get them in position. So we'll undo that. So the next step, select them all, new group from layers. So we're going to duplicate Command J. We'll duplicate that group of layers. So one is we're going to get Photoshop to blend the layers, and the other one we're going to do it ourselves. Well, not do it ourselves, but fine tune what Photoshop did. So we hide one group, select this group, edit, auto blend layers. So this is Photoshop's focus stacking. We'll turn off content aware fill and transparent areas because we're just going to make it all black anyway, and this will speed it up. So we want stack, seamless tones and colors. That won't really matter a whole lot. And then we go OK, and I'll see you in a little bit. So Photoshop has done what it thinks is all in focus, and it's actually done a pretty good job. So we're going to flatten this stack because we're not going to fiddle around with what it did. Merge visible layers. So we'll crop our image. So now the fun begins. So we ungroup this. Make them all go away. So we have our base layer here. What Photoshop did, and what we're going to do is we're going to go through and pick the areas that might be better in the original image that Photoshop didn't do when it stacked it. So we'll manually stack any areas that we like better in the 17 images here. So to do that, you click on it, you make a layer mask. So this is the area of focus on here. We make the layer mask, make it all go away. So, and then we just invert this back and forward and find the areas that we like better. So white reveals, black conceals. So we invert it. We'll make the area appear, and then you look for areas in the focus area of that single frame that you like better. So in this one, this is actually the part of the picture that was used, but it's darker on the outside, so I'll use that. And with a white brush, I'll mask in. So now the other area is there. So now we have the same thing, but with a cleaner background image. It'll make a little bit later better. So you can see in here, these detail lines are more detailed than here. So we'll brush those in. And this is a tedious process. So you're just picking the areas that are a little bit more in focus. And as you go through, there'll be less and less, but each one will have its plane, so you're not looking over the whole thing. You're only looking through that small section, and it'll be more in slices. And you'll kind of know where you're looking for. So we can move on to the next one, add it, layer mask. So this is the area that's in focus, a little bit higher up here, invert, and then again, you're looking for those details where it's sharper. So this is the original, and this is our layer we're going to blend, and you can see that up here, Photoshop had a better image to go with. And this is where you'll kind of make your lines show up. So you can see how this line is a little bit more straight. And it's both same focus. So we add that, make it same thing here. And again, this is a tedious process. Depending on how many frames you have and how badly they were. Like before, I used the Photoshop stack, and it would take me about 3 to 4 hours to do this manually. And then it's a whole lot quicker now because Photoshop actually does a pretty good job these days. And we just go through looking for the better things. So I normally slap either listen to music, watch something on TV as I go through this. So I'm going to go through here. I'll speed it up. There's one more thing before. If you have one frame that is significantly darker than some of the others, but you still want to use it. So let's say this frame is dark. You add an exposure or a brightness layer to it. Right click, create a clip and mask. So that will apply that adjustment only to that layer. And then you can increase the brightness to kind of match whatever the other images are at. And then you can continue doing the same process. So add your layer mask and then go through. So I'll quickly go through this, or at least quick for you, slow for me, and we'll see you when I've gotten through all the layers. Here's a really good example where this is what Photoshop did, and this is the layer that we're adding. So it focused on the fiber that was coming across, and then we can get a much better version of the flake. There, we're done. It might look the same, but it's going to be a cleaner overall. So next step, we're going to flatten everything. So flatten image. And then we're going to get rid of the obvious distractions. And we're just going to paint on black. So we'll duplicate layer. Black brush. Get rid of those fibers. You can go in. Another way to kind of make this a little bit easier, you can add an exposure layer, and you can crank the exposure. I'll let you know where all the spots are, because we kind of want it to be black. To fine tune the inner area, we'll use luminosity masks. There are other ways to do it, but it's the easiest. So again, these are those fibers from the mitten coming through. So obviously this is an area I misfocus on. For the most part, I actually did all right on this leaf, and it's obviously not a perfect subject. You can see the ice bubbles or the water vapors on it. So some of these obvious ones on the outskirts you can brush away as well. Those more so again, this is probably broken off on the mitten as well, broken debris. So we got a fiber across here. We'll use content aware fill to remove that. Again, fibers across the top are kind of a pain in the butt. But So that's a pretty good quick job on it. So again, we're gonna fine tune to kind of get rid of all these lighter areas in here, because that's not part of the flake, that's just black, or it should be black. So we'll create a new layer. And we can do like a levels adjustment. You could go into camera raw and do like lower your blacks. So we'll drop our blacks down. And then we'll invert that to not do it. And then again, we're going to target this area, and we're going to do that with luminosity masks. So I have two luminosity panels, TK actions, just the basic one and luminosity. They're both free. So we're going to target the darks. So we click on the dark side of the panel. You can do this the hard way as well without the panels, but so again, white reveals and black conceals. So whatever the white area is where we're going to be applying that adjustment. And right now it's a little too aggressive. So the more and more black we have, that's the flake shape, the more it won't be applied to the flake. So we'll select this and use it as a stencil essentially. So we're going to hide our merchant ants, Command H. And then when we paint onto our mask layer, again, a white's going to reveal what we just did through the stencil. So again, you can still fine tune it, but you can see that it's adding black. And if we look at what our mask is doing, it's preventing it from darkening down the flake while applying it to that area where we want it to be black. So we kind of scooting around the edges again doing this. Sometimes you got to do it a couple times depending on how bright your background is. So like this area I'll need to do again, but again you just keep going down, targeting that dark area. So and you can use your increase the exposure to kind of show that area again. All right, so here's our flake now with one of those done. So if you're doing this and you find things sort of working funky, we still have those ants hidden. So we deselect those, so Command D, and we'll deselect them. And then if we were to do another adjustment or whatever, we just make another selection. But if you're trying to like remove something and it's not going, it's because so we can do that a few times to kind of really get in there. But again, like we're more or less there. So all this pink, magenta, greens, that's a chromatic aberrations from the lens. So I'll remove that with a vibrance layer, drop down the saturation. Some flakes, you'll have a really nice vibrant colors in your centerpiece. So obviously you'll want those. Those aren't the chromatic aberrations. It's just the way the light bounces through the flake. This flake is not an example of that. So now we want to kind of give our flake a little bit of shimmer again. So I'll add a photo filter. And we'll change it to a bluey and darker blue. And then again, like desaturate it, shimmery. The next step that I do is merge visible layers or create a merge layer. So we're going to add a little bit of pop to the edge. So in camera raw, I normally just crank the clarity. You could probably do some other things, add white, highlights, that kind of thing. But if we crank the clarity, and again, we're only going to apply this to the edge. So mask it out. And then I got white reveal, so we paint it around the edge. See, it gives it a little bit of, just makes it pop a little bit more. So this is where you'll find some, I normally just do the edge of the flakes on the outsides. And then this is going to highlight any of the other brighter areas. So you'll go in again and so we've gone more or less around all the outer edges. So I'll go in and do another fine tune on the add in the black, but that's more or less it. So we'll crop the shape. And then if you could do some final tweaks over on the overall image. So some brightness, make it a little bit brighter. You don't want to blow out the highlights. There. So that's the process I go for my snowflakes.